This is Note-Taking Guide 5.1, Graphing Absolute Values. So the absolute value graph is a V-shaped function. It has a vertex point that normally starts at 0, 0, and then it follows the pattern over 1, up 1, over 1, up 1, over 1, up 1 in both directions. So from the vertex point, you can find the next point on the absolute value graph by going over 1, up 1. So the general form of an absolute value graph is right over here. In order to get our graph to move left or right, we would put a number here attached to the x. In order to move our graph up or down, we would put a number right here in place of the k. And in order to stretch our graph vertically, we would change the number out in front. If it was the number 2, instead of going over 1, up 1, we would go over 1, up 2, over 1, up 2. So how do we know if we're going left or right or up or down according to the numbers that are put into our equation? Well, inside this right here, if we have a plus sign attached to the x, we're really going to be moving left. It seems like we should be moving right, but if it's a plus sign there, we're going to move left. And if it's a minus sign, we're going to move right. So the reason that is because we're actually making movement on the x-axis, so we need to know what the x value is. And I'll talk about that in just a minute. If the k value, though, back behind is positive, then we're going up. And if the k value is negative, then we're moving down. So let's just do a couple of examples here and see if we can figure this out. So this number right here, the 1, it tells us if we're moving left or right from the origin. Because the 1 is positive, we're going to be moving left. Because it always is the opposite if it's inside the grouping symbols and if it's attached to the x. And I like to kind of think about this, the reason that it happens is because if I'm going to have a value on the x-axis, my y value would have to be 0. So I'm really trying to figure out what value would make this 0. And the value that would make that 0 would be a -1 for x, and -1 on the x-axis would be to the left. So point being, again, just kind of look at it and seeing the opposite of it. So if it's a +1, it's left. And then if it was a negative, it would be right. But back behind when we're looking at the number, if it's negative, we're going down. And if it was positive, we would be going up. So we're going to start this graph by going left 1 and down 5. So left 1, down 5, which is right here for our starting point. And then from there, we're going to follow our pattern. So I told you that our pattern would be over 1, up 1 in both directions, over 1, up 1 in both directions. And our absolute value graph goes through those ordered pairs. Okay, let's try it again. Alright, I'm sorry I got interrupted there for just a minute, so I can't remember what I was saying, but let's just start looking at this one all over again. So this -1 right here is going to ask me to go right 1, because you always do the opposite if it's in the grouping symbols. And then the +3 right here is going to be up 3. So we start our graph by going right 1 and up 3, and we just do our ordered pair there. Because this number out in front is 2, our pattern changes. Instead of going over 1, up 1, I would go over 1, up 2, over 1, up 2, and then again over 1, up 2. So my V-shaped graph goes through those ordered pairs. So down here at the bottom there's some questions. It says, what did the 2 do to the graph? Well, it stretched it vertically. What did the -1 do to the graph? It moved it right. And what did the +3 do to the graph? It moved it up. So now that we know how to graph these absolute value graphs, we're going to see if we can go backwards and actually write the equation. We know we're going to be y equals, and we know we're going to have the absolute value of x. We just don't know if there's going to be anything added or subtracted to it. So let's look and see. We did not start at the origin. We actually went over and down to get there. So we went right 1 and down 4. Right 1 would be inside the parentheses as a -1, and down 4 would be outside the parentheses as a -4. Then we just need to check our pattern to make sure that our pattern was the right pattern. Did I go over 1, up 1, over 1, up 1, over 1, up 1? And I did not, so I know that there's got to be a number in front causing my pattern change. So I really went over 1, up 2, over 1, up 2, over 1, up 2. So I do have a number 2 out here in front of my equation. So my equation should be y equals 2 times the absolute value of x minus 1 minus 4. All right, one last problem. This one flips upside down, so we know automatically it's going to have a negative sign on it. But let's just kind of see what we did with our left and right and up and down. So from the origin, we moved 2 to the left. And from the origin, we moved 3 up. So left is going to be a plus, so plus 2 inside the grouping symbol. Up is going to be a plus 3. The upside down is going to be a negative, and then let's just check our pattern to see if we did the normal pattern. Over 1, down 1, over 1, down 1, over 1, down 1. So with that negative out front, we took care of the down, and our pattern is just 1 over 1.